Welcome to the Holiness Today podcast. On this Archives episode, listen to Mendell Taylor teach on the roots of the Church of the Nazarene, Part 2, at College Church of the Nazarene in Olathe, Kansas. This audio was featured on the Minister's Tape Club of July 1979. Enjoy this short introduction by Neil Wiseman.
Public appeal to youth, challenging them to dedicate themselves to full-time Christian service, seems rather rare these days. Such a warm-hearted appeal is demonstrated in the conclusion of Dr. Mendell Taylor's series titled The Roots of the Church of the Nazarene. This is part of his presentation to the students of Mid-America Nazarene College. The first part of this message was heard on last month's tape. He begins the concluding portion with his own life story.
We'll be right back with the rest of this episode. But did you know you can receive credit for listening to Holiness Today podcast? Holiness Today podcast episodes qualify for lifelong learning with the Church of the Nazarene. To register for lifelong learning, simply go to learning.nazarene.org. The Lifelong Learning Registry provides Nazarene ministers the opportunity to record and report their efforts to develop and maintain a pattern of lifelong learning to enhance the ministry to which God has called them. Every Nazarene minister is encouraged to engage in a variety of lifelong learning activities. The code for Holiness Today podcast is 64627 and will also be listed in the show notes. This code can be utilized for this episode and any previous episode you wish to listen to. Thank you for being a listener and sharing in the ministry of the Church of the Nazarene. Now back to the rest of your episode.
Dr. Mendell Taylor.
Now I'm going to become very personal in taking a leaf out of my own life. My parents lived in Olathe, Oklahoma. My father was a clerk in a grocery store. A brown tent was pitched a block from the business section, and the title went up, Holiness Revival. There were two small tents placed close by the large tent. One was occupied by the preacher, Fred Mendell. The other tent was occupied by the singers, Brother and Sister Walker. It so happened in the Lord's providences that Fred Mendell made the Dwight L. Sample grocery store his trading place for buying the groceries for this evangelistic party of three, and that my father should be the one who waited on him and became personally acquainted with him, and before the first week was over, they were greeting each other with first name familiarity. So Brother Fred would come in and Dad would greet him, and Brother Fred would say in turn, "Good morning, Brother Tom," that being the given name of my father. The meeting had been going for 2 weeks, and then as Sunday approached, Brother Fred Mendell was in the store on Saturday to buy his groceries for the evangelistic party of three. And Dad said, "Well, I guess you'll be closing the meeting tomorrow, since you've been here the regular time of 3 Sundays. And Brother Fred Mendell said, "No, we're just about to have a gusher. And since we're so close to a gusher, we're staying on 1 more week. We just have a thin layer to break through to see it come in on a scale like that." On Wednesday night of that 3rd week, Mother and Dad went to their regular church for the prayer meeting. Their minister said again, "Don't go near the brown tent where the Holiness Revival is being held, because it just isn't safe spiritually. They confuse people, they divide families, they cause trouble and cause divisions in churches. Just stay away." On the way from that prayer meeting, Dad and Mother could hear the singing coming from under this tent. Dad said to Mother, you know, it won't hurt if we go by the tent on the other side of the street and just listen to that singing. And Mother agreed. That'll be all right. Then they started giving testimonies, and Dad said, it won't hurt if we go over on the side where the tent is and listen to those testimonies. We'll just keep our distance out on the sidewalk. Then it was preaching time, and Dad said to Mother, it won't hurt if we go in and listen to one sermon by Brother Fred Mendell, because he's a good friend of mine. And he said there's something that's really been working on me ever since he's been in town. Every time he comes in the store, he orders the same bill of groceries. Evangelistic party of 3. The bill of groceries was, Brother Tom, will you give me a nickel can of condensed milk, a 10-cent box of grape nuts? 1 day, 2 days, 7 days, 2.5 weeks. Dad said, anybody who'll live like that, 3 to share that bill of groceries on that small a budget. I don't believe they're here to hurt. I think they're here to help. Well, Dad and Mother were drawn and attracted into the experience of holiness during those next 2 or 3 nights. Both of them were called to preach. They started in on their mission of preaching. Then it wasn't long until Mother was confined to the home. And her prayer was, now, Lord, we already have the 4 girls in the family. If this one is a boy, we'll name him Mendell to honor the one who brought us this gospel at such great price. And if it's a boy, you take my call to preach and put it on him. You can figure most of the rest of it. It was a boy. He was named Mendell. When he was a freshman in junior college in the town where my dad pastored, the Lord came close enough one night as Dad was preaching that as he breathed upon me, I saw my air castles go into a distance. The jagged edges of the cross came in close enough to puncture my dreams of fantasy and grandeur. And the Lord said, I have some blueprints for you to fulfill. I objected at first. Then I said, go ahead, Lord, tear up my blueprints from here on. It's your specifications for my life. And he's done more with my life than I could ever dream could have been done. We've had announcements come from 15 former students giving information about the arrival of a new baby. The vital statistics said so much weight, such and such a length. Then when it came to the name line, the name Mendell was a part of that particular name for the new one coming into that particular family. I had a payoff that was unforgettable just last Thursday, thinking in terms of how the Lord can do more with your life than you can. It belongs to him without reservation. For it was my turn to speak in chapel last Thursday. Dr. Rob Staple, our brilliant teacher of theology, was to introduce me. And he said, I'm going to read my introduction just to make sure that I say it the way I want to say it. Then I asked for a copy of it, and I want to read it to you now. It was as a high school student that I first began to feel a divine tug on my heart, drawing me toward Christian ministry. At first I resisted, for I had other plans, but later as a student at a Nazarene college, my capitulation came one night at a young people's convention when the preacher was one of the 5 professors in a young institution called Nazarene Theological Seminary. That young professor preached that night on the topic, helping make God's dreams come true. At the close of that message, I knew that I had come to a crossroads. I had reached my moment of decision. I turned my back upon my own vocational goals and said yes to God's will. That young professor who demolished all my earthly dreams and handed me the staggering task of fulfilling God's dreams was the man who is to speak to us today, Dr. Mendell Taylor. A lot of water has flowed under the bridge since that night in Nashville Grace Church. I am now his colleague and in his eyes his equal. Outwardly, I pretend to be his equal. But when he walks by, my heart leaps up and salutes him as my Father Superior. The man who, when I stood at the crossroads, was God's instrument in settling my life on the path that in God's strange and wonderful providences has led me to this opportunity to be associated with him in this institution, and to this moment when I have the honor of commending him to you as your speaker. Yes, God can do more with your life than you can. It belongs to him without reservation. I would like to take just 2 minutes to offer a challenge to the talented young people with all of your future stretching before you, in which we need you with your skills, your abilities, to carry on that which has been a part of our great heritage. I want us to sing a chorus that says, I'll live for him who died for me. How happy then my life shall be. And I want all of those to come to the altar area. First of all, who say, I've had an encounter with the Lord, but I've never made it public. I've never let anyone know it. I should make a move that would just nail it down and settle it in a public fashion. I think I'll just have you come and kneel at the front pews along here, that group. Then for this section of the altar and around to that end, I want those to come who say, sometimes I sense that I'm called into Christian service, and then other times I am not sure, and I've never been able to get it clear. I just want to do the Lord's will for my life. And I'd like to pray about just clearing it up, getting it settled. And I want that group would like to get it settled. You're not sure, but you're wrestling with it, struggling with it, to occupy this section of the altar over here. Then in this section of the altar, I want those to come who say, I've had my own dreams, but I'm at a crossroads when God is challenging me to help make his dreams come true. And I'm ready to say to him, not my will, but thine be done, for I'll never be at my best spiritually until I say that final and ultimate yes to him. I'm sure you see the differences along here. Those who've settled it, but you haven't made it public, haven't even told your parents. Those who are wrestling with it, and those who need to just say that yes. That is final and ultimate to God's will for your life. Everybody stand, please. We're going to sing it just one time for you and you and you. What about you? Would you like to take a little time to talk to the Lord in an atmosphere like this?
Scores of Mid-America students responded to this challenge for full-time service. Think how the rippling effect of the gospel challenge keeps going on and on. Could God use such a challenge from you to help him locate a future preacher, missionary, or Christian leader in your congregation?
Thank you for listening to the Holiness Today podcast. If you enjoyed this production and wish to hear more, visit holinesstoday.org/podcast or find us on Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts.